What the president has done is covered under the Constitution, Section 175, if I'm not mistaken, of the Constitution, particularly subsection 1, says that the president may, and I want to underline that word may, is operative because it's discretionary, may grant pardon to certain categories of convicts or offenders, or those who have breached the law of the land and have been convicted one way or the other. Now, in subsection 2 of that section, it says the president will consult with the National Council of States and shall grant. So the second operative word there is the word shall. First one is may. So in other words, that power can only be exercised after due consultation with the National Council of States. And that's when it now becomes what you call a pardon that is covered by law. Now, the facts that are played out so far, one now begins to ask oneself, before the pardon, we've always noticed the reason why there's so much hue and cry is because of the person of Alamesia, former governor of Bayelsa State, who was convicted for breach of public trust. And incidentally, the president has been quoted as saying that the ex-convict, so to speak, is his political benefactor. So what has played out now, it's like giving cover to someone who you owe your political allegiance or allegiance to, and no longer to the Nigerian Constitution. So a lot of us lawyers feel that something about this is also quite right. More so at a time like this, there's a world perception of Nigeria as being a corrupt country. Now, doing this, what sort of signal are you sending to the international community? Here is a man who escaped, as it were, justice in the United Kingdom. And the same United Kingdom has convicted one of our ex-governors. Now, haven't done this. What are you saying to them? You're almost like saying anybody can get away with anything in this country insofar as whoever is saddled with the power of governance is your pally or your acronym or your friend. If that is then the case, I can commit an offense knowing that if perchance Chamberlain becomes the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, I'll get away with it. That's exactly what has happened now. Legally, yes, correct that the president can do so because he's constitutionally enabled to do that. Morally, not right.
So I think the whole question lies on the moral implication of this all. How does that affect, because you mentioned the international community, which we mustn't fail to mention in this whole effort, looking at trying to make everyone see that we are all out in the fight against corruption. So if we put the Constitution side by side with what people will see us as outside the country, morally speaking, how does that affect us in a way?
Let me justify that by saying that, and that's why the Constitution in 1751 uses the word "me." The president is not bound to grant amnesty to anyone. In granting amnesty, there are a number of factors that the president is expected to consider. One of such factors, for instance, is what we just talked about now, about international community, the perception of the international community in the war against corruption, in the war against breach of public trust. Recently, Bill Clinton came to Nigeria at Abeokuta, and he said a number of things about Nigeria's inability to manage its role. He was almost short of saying that you have been looting the Commonwealth. You're not using your resources for the advancement or for the improvement of the society and the people. Close to saying that there's so much corruption in the land, but he was just simply diplomatic in his use of words or in his choice of words. Now, for me as a person, what I consider as distasteful in all of this is the general societal perception. There's a public outcry. Here is a man who was given the responsibility of running a state and managing the resources of a state, who used the funds and was tried and convicted. It must be a lesson to anyone who is in government that it's no longer business as usual. You can't go into government, steal, and then walk away. Now, what has happened now is, yes, I can steal, only enjoy, perhaps be locked away for a short while, come out, parley with the presidency. Before this even happened, there was a time he was in the media that he presented a paper. He's been around. He's been hobnobbing with the government. He's been so close to the government. So this presidential pardon for a lot of us is almost timely. It's like giving someone a pat on the back, go and steal no more. That's what this is.
Sorry, Marco, you talk about perception. One of the perception here that almost everyone is having now has to do with the caliber of persons who get this state pardon, if it's still there in the Constitution, because we haven't seen anything like that, to the extent that we haven't seen a Nigerian that you would ordinarily call a common Nigerian who maybe at the end of the day was discovered to have been unjustly punished for any offense, get such pardon.
No,
so is it a case of the high and mighty in the society getting the pardon, or anyone?
No, not necessarily. I remember when Obasanjo was in government, presidential amnesty or state pardon was granted to a certain number of prisoners, particularly those who have been on death row for a period of, say, 20 years and above. And these are common people. There was a case of a man who subsequently was found to have been innocent. He was also granted pardon under President Obasanjo. And then again, even in this government, there are no more people who have been enjoying some sort of state pardon or amnesty. In fairness to this government, that has also taken place. The judiciary is also involved. Chief judges of state visit prisons and ask some people to simply go. So this pardon cuts across.
So it's a wrong perception after all then?
No, really. The reason why there's a general public outcry, look at the case of Bulama, for instance, convicted for stealing public funds kept in his custody or in trust as a manager of a bank. He walked away with the money and he was convicted, tried and convicted. Now, what this simply says to us as a people is that you can do anything, perhaps serve your term, and your name eventually will be erased from the book of convicts. That's what has happened. And thereby giving you another platform, another charge. The essence of this. Now, under our laws, if you have been convicted, you cannot hold any public office. You cannot be a director of any company. There are laws covering all of that. Now, once you're granted presidential amnesty or pardon, it means you never did it. So you're free to seek for political office. You're free to seek for appointment on any board of any company. Now, for us, that is not right. We must put our foot down. Recently in the UK, some secretary, equivalent of a minister, was jailed with his wife for traffic offense. Can you have that here? The answer is no.
But are we not placing too much emphasis? I mean, we're listening to Mr. Aranta, and he was talking about the greatest type of corruption, which is corrupting the democratic process. And he says the hue and cry over this two that we've pointed out is actually way louder than the other ones on the list. And he believes the reverse should be the case. What do you have to say to that?
Now, first, I do not share his views. Corruption is corruption. When it started does not matter. The process does not matter. The fact is we are in a system that is corrupt at different levels. Corruption in the democratic process. Corruption has always been with us, whether under the military or under the democratic process. It's always been part of us. It is the will to fight that is not the problem. I don't share his views about the democratic process itself being fraught with corruption. It goes beyond that. For us, I feel that what we need to do now is to start tackling corruption at different levels. Not to what I saw in some of the comments. It's almost like trying to justify what has happened and shifting focus